Okay, so in this lesson, hello everyone. So in this lesson, I'm going to be talking about fine details. The fine details normally you can find in true false not given questions and yes no not given questions. So these are the trickiest question types because they test fine details, right? For example, what are fine details? That's important. So what are fine details? Fine details are small, precise pieces of information that can change the meaning. Right? Example, uh, they are the tiny differences in wording, numbers, and qualifiers. So that IELTS reading questions often test. Right? So I'll give you an example so that you can understand what are fine details. Because in true false not given question and yes no not given questions, uh, they are going to check whether you notice these fine details, right? So if you're missing them, then you're going to confuse true false not given answers, right? So it can lead to confusing true false not given answers. So for example, if you look at our example passage, the conference begins at 9:30 a.m. and lasts for 3 hours. If you look at our statements, the conference starts at 9:30 a.m., right? So what are the fine details? You can see 9:30 a.m. that is in the passage, and the statements also mention the exact words and the exact details, right? 9:30 a.m. So the statement matches fine details in the passage. So then you can decide true. What about the second one? Look at the second answer, the second question. The conference start at 9 a.m. So this is one of the fine detail. So, but in this sentence, the fine detail in this statement contradicts the passage, contradicts the information in the passage, or contradicts the fine details in the passage. So what are the fine details in the passage? 9:30 a.m. But the fine detail in the statement is 9 a.m. The conference starts at 9 a.m. That is our statement. But the passage says the conference begins at 9:30 a.m. So the fine detail here is the exact time, 9:30 a.m. That is the exact, precise information, the precise detail. But if you can find a fine detail which is not the exact or which is not similar to 9:30 a.m., then that's actually contradicts the passage. So then we will decide the answer false, right? So what I'm talking about, fine detail means small, precise pieces of information, the accurate information that these details can change the meaning of the sentence, right? So these tiny differences in wording or in numbers, or maybe it could be qualifiers, right? It can change the meaning, right? So these, if you're missing these tiny differences, then you will be confusing true false not given answers. So you should be aware when you see these specific details, or specific details mean fine details. So fine details are the specifics like dates, times, and numbers, or qualifiers, right? Qualifiers example, always, usually, only, for these are some examples for qualifiers. So these words can change the complete sentence meaning, right? The sentence meaning completely. So IELTS loves testing whether you notice